This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Tonight we are continuing from last week. First and foremost, we would like to invite everyone to join us, all the women, on our Thursday night's women's only class at 1601 Quentin Road at the BJX location. We are continuing our series from last week. So last week we started speaking about, we continued off from the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, the story of the Exodus, where we left off 2 years ago. We continued it last week, and now we're going to continue the story until Matan Torah, until the giving of the Torah. So last week we spoke about the bitter waters and what transpired during that. 6 days after. We are learning tonight 6 days after the Jewish people arrived at Marah, which is the bitter waters of last week. They arrived at a place called Elim. Now, Elim, there was something fantastic that happened over there, amazing that happened over there. It was a complete desert land. When the Jewish people arrived, it was just like a miracle that happened. Think about it things just popped up, and there were 70 different palm trees that just sprouted instantly, and 12 springs all happen in that desert area. Imagine people are walking in a desert and you see that, you think it'd be a mirage or something like dehydration. But this was actual. All of a sudden, suddenly out of nowhere, these springs came out. These palm trees came into being. Now, what is the significance about these numbers? So, the 12 springs correspond to the 12 different tribes of Israel, and the 70 palm tree. Anybody knows why 70? Very good. 70 elders. Yeah, 70 is a Canaan. The 70 elders, each one corresponding to one another. Now, the question is asked, why did God have to do that? God was making a miracle. So God made a miracle, then just make it like a huge lake of clear, natural running water, a bunch of palm trees. Why did it have to be specifically 12 different springs, 70 different palm trees? What was this signifying? So the Midrashim, the sages tell us that each of the springs corresponded to a different tribe, and each of the palm trees corresponded to a different one of the elders. What was this comparable? So Rabbi Fran goes and explains this as follows. Imagine you're going to this out-of-town extravagant type of wedding, and everybody's flying in from all over. What do they call it? When the people fly out to weddings? Right, losers. I'm sorry, right, destination weddings. I'm sorry. So that's what I meant to say. Destination weddings, which I never, it's like a whole vacation. Everybody, let's go to an island and let's get married in the dirty sand, and this is going to be, amazing. And everyone has to pay $17,000 to go and participate in our, in our enjoyment. So those are people. If they're going, as you see, I'm going off tangent. If they're going and they're going to go and pay for your tickets, that's another thing. But if they go and say, okay, listen, you're going to have to come to the Bahamas, Hawaii, whatever it is that their destination wedding is, and you have to pay for it, that's not nice. You're inviting somebody, here's an invitation to come fly, 4,000 miles to come and join us in a dirty, wavy beach to participate in our, in our joyous occasion. So how do we get into this? 70, okay, fine. So imagine somebody's going and inviting all these people into this far out place, and everyone's coming from all over the world. Now this person has paid for the tickets. Obviously, it's a Jewish story. So they paid for all the tickets, and they go and they say, listen, they wanted to sort of, in this crazy way, they wanted to make sure everybody feels at home. So, and people even know this over here, even though that they're second or third generation living in this country. But wherever you came from originally, you have a certain type of ethnic food. You have a certain type of things that you like. You even have your, certain types of, depending where you come from, your newspapers that you read. So this guy went and created is that everybody, he put them up in different hotels, but in the hotels he created for them different foods that they're used to, all the different types of fruits that they're used to, and then he also went and he put in each and every person's room, wherever they came from, the newspaper of that local, right? So if they came to people who came from Brooklyn, I don't know what people in Brooklyn read. I can't say anything online because I know I'm going to get in trouble whatever I say. But let's say you read the Brooklyn Times, right? And you read this, whatever it is, and you're coming into this far out destination island wedding, and in your room you see the paper that you always read. So it's sort of a way of showing the loving and the kindness that this person has for you. Look, after he flew you all out and he gave you everything, he organized everything particular to your desires, to your needs. So this is what Hashem was doing. Hashem was doing what he could have made a miracle that just all the water came out and the food and the fruits and everything came out just like blossomed instantly. But what he did was that everybody got their own section, meaning that God cares about every single person. Oh, you're from the tribe of Reuven, you have the spring from the tribe of Reuven, meaning that God sort of catered, gave that newspaper to each and every single one of these the Jewish people in the desert. So during their stay in Elim, the Jewish people went and they actually learned their lesson from what happened in Marah, and they actually studied all the Torah that they learned from Marah, which is from the last class. One of the things that we learned from here, while they were here, they were learning and studying the Torah, they didn't lack anything. Everything that they wanted, God provided for them. So one of the lessons that we learned over here is that if you do what you need to do for God, God will take care of you. If you don't, may God help you, and you're on your own. But if you do what you need to, then God will go and help you. So 11 days after they reached to this place called Elim, they went and they traveled again. Now, one of the miraculous things that happened as well is when they left this place, all the things, all the palm trees, all the date tree, everything that just like popped up, just disappeared. So the second they left, it was like gone. It was back to desert. They went and they arrived at a place called Alush. In this place, at this place is something very significant, I guess we could call it, happened. 31 days after they left Egypt, they ran out of food. So when the Jewish people left Egypt, they left with 61 meals. And each day they ate 2 meals. That means after 30 days, after the morning meal, by midday they were out of food already. This happened at Alush over here. Now, the people, when they went and one of the miraculous things that happened was that the food that they left from Egypt stayed fresh. Now, I could almost guarantee, and I say almost guarantee, they didn't have Ziploc back then. So when you think about food being kept fresh in the olden days, that's gotta be that's a crazy miracle in itself. Imagine you're going and you leave a cake on your counter. It's only a matter of hours before the thing crusts and crumbles. If it doesn't, then you're nervous about it. You're like, why is this still fresh after all along? Like, what else is inside over here? So the fact that it stayed fresh for 30 days, can you imagine what it is? Traveling in the desert, which is not the most optimal circumstance that you could have your food remain fresh. After 31 days, it still remained fresh till the last day. Now, when all the food ran out, the people started complaining. Now, the Mount Law looks at it from a positive angle. He looks at it and says, look, this is amazing. The Jewish people, they had already, let's talk about 2 or 3 days prior to when they're running out of food. So imagine you're traveling in the desert. No cell phone, no cars, you're just walking in the desert. And you're walking with your spiritual guide, your spiritual leader. I hope this is not practical for anybody today, because if it is, then we have a whole different discussion that we need to go through. But imagine you go to the desert, and you have 2 days left, and you don't know how far you're going to the desert. Wouldn't you say, hey, listen, as a Jewish mother, I have to take care of this, but where is the food going to be for the next, I don't know, we only have food for 2 days. What's going to be in the next week? What's going to be in 4 days? What's going to be with my hungry children? My husband eats a cow every week. What's going to happen with all the food? Where is it going to be? Yet the Jews didn't complain. They didn't say anything. They kept their mouth shut. Only until the food ran out, all of a sudden they started to complain. However, the complaining, it still was very, very negative. And in fact, the Midrashim goes and brings down that the Erev Rav was heavily represented in this area. Did we speak about it over here last week, and how come, they blame always the other people? We spoke about it over here. It was in this class?
I don't think so.
No one knows. Possibly. What?
Yeah, we did.
We did speak about it over here, right? I don't remember where I spoke about it. Okay.
Erev Rav.
Right, like how come all of a sudden that bad thing happens and now the Jews are all special. It's not the Jewish people, it's the Erev Rav. We didn't speak about that actually?
No.
Where did I speak about that then?
No,
Okay, so this is a question that was asked by me somewhere, sometime, and I thought I spoke about it this last week, that, so over here is another situation where the Jewish people complained, and what happened is, you look in the Midrashim, it says, who was the majority representation of the complaints? It was the Erev Rav, the Egyptians that came along and converted into Judaism and came along to accompany the Jewish people to get the Torah. So, I had this question that I asked and says, like, really? Is that what happened? So the chosen people, go out after all this miraculous journey, and then they do something wrong, and who do we blame? We point the finger on the people, like it was them. It was the people that came with us. It wasn't us, come on. We're special. We're just amazing people. It's got to be, it's like, like a mother and a child relationship. Child comes home one day, the principal calls up and says, the child comes home bloody, and the mother's all, scared. She's like, what's going on over here? And the child says, don't worry, it's not my blood. So for a second, the mother feels happy, and then she's like, wait, whose blood is this? And she's like, well, and the little boy's like, well, you should have seen the other kid. And, it gets a phone call from the principal, and be like, do you know what your kid did? And she was like, first of all, it was probably the other kid's fault. My kid is an angel. Come on. Yeah, he bites erasers off and swallows them, but that's just because he's so smart and he knows the potassium level inside of that. It's not for any other reason. You know how mothers are. So when you think about it, anybody who's in education knows what I'm talking about, or a parent. You go and you look at the story of Jewish people leaving Israel and leaving Egypt and going into the desert, and the bad things. Oh, we blamed the golden calf. Yeah, the Erev Rav. All the complaints in the desert. Yeah, the Erev Rav. All this, the person that failed my rotas, Erev Rav. Everybody is just the Erev Rav. Is that really what's going on? Is that really fear? So one of the things that comes to mind when you have these questions presented to you is, does the Torah put blame on people when they deserve blame? Does the Torah shy away from blame? Now, one thing that you know for sure, if you've even had a very, very cursory glance at the Torah, you know that the Torah, if someone did something wrong, it says it straight out there. If Moses did something wrong, it says right out there that he did something wrong. If the Jewish people did something wrong, it says it right out there. There's no hiding and shying away. It's not like any other religion or cult that the leader is signifying as like an angel. Have you ever, please say no, read the New Testament and it says there, look, JC did something terrible and God was really upset with him. It would never say that over there because, JC's God, whatever. We're going to go on a rabbit hole now. But, you're not going to be able to figure out anywhere. Have you ever read the Quran and says that Muhammad did something wrong? Are you kidding me? It's like, this guy's an angel. This guy's he's a prophet. Everybody, every religion, the leaders, the rulers of the place always are known in a positive sense. But in Judaism, it's not like that. If there was a problem, it was notified.
Don't we, though, in a certain sense, sometimes very, glorify them, too much, the rabbis, maybe? The way that Christians do and Muslims do? Not
at all. In fact, it's just the opposite. It depends. I guess it depends on which sect you're talking about, and there's a lot of ways that I could read that question that could be very problematic. And it doesn't mean, and if I think I know what you're saying, then that's a different story in itself,
okay.
And that's not correct. The correct way, obviously, you don't say, well, my rabbi, you know what he did last night? You don't go and you present the sins, obviously. But what the Torah does, you don't question. And the Torah many times goes and says, they did this sin, they did something wrong. You have time and time again where the leaders and the rulers went and they did something wrong. So when the Torah, which has a track record of signifying when someone did something wrong, if they say, hey, by the way, the majority of the issues came from this section, you could trust that because they have nothing to hide. If there will be, if God wanted everybody to know about this, it would be placed over there. One thing the Torah is known for, it's the truth. It's the emet. There is nothing other than the truth in the Torah. There's no falsification of the ideas, making the Jewish people seem so on a high pedestal. The Jewish people are signified exactly the way that they are. When they're good, they're known as good. When they're bad, they're known as bad. It's as simple as black and white. So now, when the people left and the people started complaining over here, the Midrashim says that the majority it came from the Erev Rav. However, as it says, majority. So majority means that also the Jewish people were involved in it as well. Now, what did they complain? They complained. They came into a place, so into a point in their travels where they ran out of food. They didn't have anything left over, and they started complaining. What would you think the complaint would be? Let's pray to God. Let's go, and maybe God will make another miracle. But their complaints were not like that. The complaints were, why did God bring us? Why did you bring us over here? Is this over here to die? It would have been better that we would have died in the darkness plague back in Egypt. Why do we have to come over here? because the death by starvation is one of the worst deaths possible. So why would he have to die through starvation? Let us in the desert. Let us die in the plague of Egypt, in the plague of darkness. So the complaints continued, and they even complained about the meat, even though they didn't have meat. But they complained. But we smelled the meat in Egypt, even though we didn't have it, but we were able to smell it. And we had at least bread in Egypt, even though it was stale or whatever it was, we still had something to eat. So they went and they presented these complaints to Moshe and Aaron. And they went and they were very clear. They were like, by the way, our complaints are not with God. We see what God is capable of, right? After a certain time where you realize the strength of someone, you know not to mess with that person anymore. So they were like, okay, we learned the lesson. We know the situation with God. We know his power. We know his ability. But our complaint is with you. Like, what's up with you guys? Like, why are we in the desert? Did we really have 30 days in the desert? Really? Like, God really wanted? We couldn't stay in Egypt? We couldn't be, there was no one there. Like, we could have been over there. We had to come over here where there's no food, there's no water, there's no wells, there's no nothing. We're here in the desert. Maybe you took a wrong turn. Have you ever been there driving somewhere and maybe it was your parents, maybe it was somebody else, you know, like, oh, this is, by the way, does anybody here remember, I don't know, you guys are very young, remember what life was before GPS?
No.
You guys don't remember? One person remembers what GPS.
I do, because like,
you remember?
My dad only like got one like.
When I was younger,
MapQuest.
forget it, I'm talking about before MapQuest, where you had to actually have maps.
Oh no.
Like paper maps.
No.
Where
You can still blame it on Waze. Waze also
recalculates.
Yes. And like
One thing my wife says all the time, says
really long.
the one thing that's great about Google Maps and about Waze is that it solves so many Shalom Bayis problems. Because every time, you know, like the wife is over there with a huge map of America, and they're traveling this little section in the corner over here, and they're like, I think you have to go to the 290 I-Fay for 8. And be like, that doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. It's in this map over here. Well, there's no sign over here. How do you read the sign? How can you not know how to drive? Ask directions. I'm not going to ask directions. I'm over here. I know how to drive. I'm back over there. And then, hi, therapist. How are you? No, everything is fine. Yeah, everything is great. We just have one question. You know, like, my husband's an idiot, you know, like, and my wife doesn't know how to read the map, you know, like, it goes back and forth and the whole thing, and you picture if somebody ever went on, you know, I remember even before MapQuest, when I was driving by myself and I had to go and figure out how to drive places, I would have to write, like, all these, I made my own MapQuest before MapQuest came. I'm like, okay, when you come over here, make a right at, like, whatever, I-95, and you have to go, you go on and on and on, and there's sometimes where you're driving and you're like, it seems like I'm in a different country because I've been driving for like 3 hours and I should have been taking some exit a long time ago. You know, you don't write how many kilometers. Now it's amazing. You open up Google Maps, you open up Waze, and you drive in 600 feet, you know, make a left. Well, it depends. If you're in Israel or in America, it works a little bit different. You know, in America, the GPS is very calm and relaxed, you know. In 600 feet, make a left. In 500 feet, make a left. In 400 feet, make a left. Until you mute it, usually, right? Yeah. And like, now, make a left. And if you miss a turn, recalculate. Exactly. Recalculate. Don't worry about it. I got this. I'll tell you exactly where to go. Recalculating, right? In Israel, it's a little bit different. Hi. Huh? Not over here, no. I'm sorry. You go, needs navigation, right? You go, and in 50 feet, you know, it says, okay, recalculating, right? Obviously, the joke goes, if you have an Israeli, you know, GPS navigation, if you miss one turn, it's going to curse you out and be like, how are you idiot? You know, how could you miss this turn? You know, I am out, you know, like, figure it out yourself. No recalculating for you, right? Or they'll recalculate you to, like, some Arab territory. Like, oh, good luck on yourself. So, but before navigation, before MapQuest, before maps, you have Moshe and Aaron are traveling in the desert. And all of a sudden, they're out of food. One of the first thought process would be like, you made a wrong turn. We were supposed to go to a place where there was another 12 springs and 70 palm blades. What is going on over here? So they went and they started blaming Moshe and Aaron for going and messing it up. Now, Moshe and Aaron went, and they sat over there, and they took all the complaints, didn't say anything, and they were listening to all the complaints. Now, while these angry people were going and demonstrating and complaining against Moshe and Aaron, God came to Moshe and already gave them the solution. He did. God also, we'll soon see, gave a rebuke the Jewish people for what they did, but he also gave them the solution. And the solution was as follows. He said that God tells Moshe Rabbeinu that I'm going to rain bread from heaven. And what's interesting is that this is going to be a test. This is going to be a test of the bread that they get from heaven, if they're going to follow my Torah or not. And then the God's instruction goes on the 6th day, it's going to rain twice as much, so on Shabbat you don't go and you don't have to follow you don't have to pick up the bread that fell from heaven. Now, we're going to get into that in a little bit later. So, Moshe Rabbeinu goes and he tells the people, he says, listen, he says, it's understandable that your food supply is run out, you didn't have anything left to eat, and you needed something to eat. But what's all this about, like, it's better off in Egypt? Let's go back to Egypt? Like, really? Like, is that really better off? Is it really better off to go to Egypt? Psychologically, unfortunately, many of us are in this situation. And I'm sure many of us could actually relate to this. If you had a very difficult time in your life, and then you look back on it and be like, oh, the good old days. Yeah, that was the good old times. What good old times? Like, you weren't able to put bread on the table. Like, what a good old times. You are abused by who knows what. Like, what's the good... People go... Where this comes into play a lot, the truth is where I see it come to play a lot, previous relationships. I don't know, I see that a lot.
Yeah.
Previous relationship. People have marital problems. And they're like, you know what? The worst thing, well, not the worst thing, there's many worse things that you can say, but one of the really bad things you can say. Be like, you know what? I could have married the right person. I can't believe I married you, and you are causing me all this problem. If I would have married that, oh, how great my life would have been. Now, meanwhile, you're thinking back of your, I don't know, previous dates or other type, whatever it is that, depending on your religious, affinity to, Judaism is where we can go off on this. But depending on your previous relationship statuses, you're going to be like, you know what? I had something good and I messed it up. I did this and I messed it up. In essence, you didn't mess anything up because God wanted you to marry this person. God didn't want you to marry that person. But what do people think of? They look at previous relationships. Even though it was abusive, it wasn't healthy, it wasn't good, it wasn't beneficial, it was doomed for destruction, but you look back, oh, remember the good old days. Remember, you never have people, sitting on a stoop, drinking their tea, let's make it PG, right? They're drinking their tea and saying, oh, like, you remember the time when we were abused as children? Great times, right? So happy we're in today's day and age. No, people will be like, oh, remember the good old days where riding a train cost $1? All right, that is like, nobody here knows even that, right? Like, how old am I? Like, wait, like, I'm trying. Riding a train used to cost, what is it now?
$2.75.
$2.75, yeah. You know what's funny? When I was younger, so we used to listen to a thing called When Zadie Was Young, and I'm like, remember when I went on the trolley for a nickel? And I'm like, I remember when I bought 2 slices of pizza and a Coke and fries for $2.50.
What?
Yeah, I remember $2.50, and then cheese went up.
Inflation.
Yeah, and I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm living through that nickel story now? I'm too young to live through that nickel story now. It should happen in like 50 years. Like, what's going on? But like, when you look back, you're like, oh, like, remember the good old days. Well, yeah, well, like, back then, minimum wage was also, like, everything is relative to what it is.
What are you talking about? The just like making the general...
People always make a generalization. People tend to remember the good part and not the bad part. Yeah. So the Jewish people now, they're in the desert and they're like, oh, remember the good old days when we were in Egypt? What good old days? You are slaves, you are being abused, you're being beaten, you are being murdered. What good old days? But that's how psychologically we work. We remember only the the good.
Comfort versus like...
It's not comfort, it's running away from reality. It's running away from reality really is the essence of the issues, a lot of issues at hand. But in any case, so they go and they complain about what happened in Egypt. Now, what people tend to do now that is very, very unhealthy, blame others. I don't know if you guys are aware of this situation. It happens in relationships. It happens when people go off the dial. People were religious and they went off there. Why are you not religious anymore? Well, my rabbi was very strict. Okay, so he was a teacher. That's very good. No, my parents, they hit me. You probably deserved it. You're a loser and you're a fool. Like I'll probably hit you right now. Like, with all due honesty, like the people go and they blame other people for their errors, for their issues. Why do you have such a bad personality? Well, growing up, I was picked on as a child, so now I pick on others. Like, that doesn't mean anything. That's just putting the blame on others. So what these people were trying to do, the people in the desert, they were putting the blame on Moshe and Aaron. I was like, oh, Moshe and Aaron, you guys didn't look at your navigation properly, and you took a wrong turn, and now we have no food. So thank you very much for all that. We could have been done, stayed in Egypt for that. So Moshe Rabbeinu responded and said, really? Do you really think that it was us that took you? We took you out of Egypt? Like, we made all the miracles? We were the ones? You think even we can orchestrate, the itinerary for millions of people through the desert? It's like we're following exactly whatever that God told us to do. So as long as we're following it, there's nothing about us that we did anything. And in fact, Moshe and Aaron says, we're nothing. It's not like we could say thank you. We could take credit for this. It's not like we could say, oh, you know what, by the way, I always thought I drink only a cup of water. Now I realize that I'm probably drinking a few cups before it finishes. But thank you. So what happened was Moshe Rabbeinu goes on, continues the message, and it says, listen. So the next 24 hours is going to be very crucial. You guys are you're going to see such amazing wonders that you've never seen before in your life. In the evening tomorrow, you're going to have something that's going to fly out from the heavens. It's going to be meat that's going to fly from the heavens. It's going to be known as slop, quail. These birds are going to fly out from heaven, and you're going to be able to eat your meat. And Moshe and Aaron goes and says, Hashem is being kind to you. Even though you don't deserve it and you complained, God is going to give you meat to show you that God is able to feed you in the desert with meat, with whatever it is that you want. And even though they went and they didn't deserve it, God went and gave it to them, but He gave it in the way that they didn't fully appreciate it, and we'll soon see why. What? They did have animals, which is one of the complaints as well. Very good. Moshe Rabbeinu said, listen, you guys have many animals. So you didn't have any meat. You could go and slaughter. Rather, they didn't want to slaughter the animals, right? They wanted to go, it's the same concept. You have somebody that goes on a picnic, and they prepared amazing amount of meats and great food, but then they realize that Hatzalah is doing a thing in Marine Park, whatever it is, right? And they're giving out popcorn and stale bread for everybody who wants. Whatever, Hatzalah does it right. But whatever, another organization, right? They give out so what do you do? Be like, we'll save the meat, Like, that's the free stuff. We want to take some of that. We could save this for later. So they go and they grab everything else. So the Jewish people back then, you're right, they had meat, they had their animals, but they didn't want it. They didn't want to use it up. So they wanted to go and get it somehow from God. So Moshe Rabbeinu says you're going to have meat. These birds are going to fly out from heaven, and you're going to have plenty of meat to eat, but you're going to have to prepare it very quickly. It's not going to stay there for long. It's not, there's a lot of criteria that's going to come into play over here because God is going to show you that He's not happy with what your request was. With bread, yeah, you're right. With the necessities of life, what you need, God is going to give you, and it's full of His glory. You're going to see the amazing things that's going to happen. But with the meat, with the extra stuff, the ones that you're showing that you're all involved in all the luxuries of life, God is going to show you what He really means in that, what He really appreciates, in these matters. So after Moshe Rabbeinu went and spoke, the people realized that they stepped over the bounds. They realized everything that happened, so they were very embarrassed. They were very, they looked down. They knew that they messed up. Again, so they went and they decided they wanted to do tshuva, and they went and they repented, and they begged Hashem for forgiveness. The clouds of glory, the Ananei Kavod, reappeared and came back to the Jewish people to show them that God accepted your repentance and you are forgiven. That evening became dark, and you couldn't see anything, and all of a sudden, birds started falling off, into the ground, and there was so much birds that came from out of nowhere, and they just landed all over. They came piles and piles of birds, to the extent that it was literally a scene that you can't even picture in reality. You have to picture it as a fictional idea that they did in Hollywood or something. And there was birds that were so high that the people, when they wanted to grab the bird or capture the bird, all they had to do was stick their hands out. They didn't have to turn around, they didn't have to bend down, they didn't have to there was so much that all they had to do was just stick their hands and grab it, and they had enough. They had so much that the pile of birds that came, and the birds were still alive, the pile of birds that came, you were able to see it in a day's travel in the desert. From a day's travel away, you see piles and piles of birds. So the people went, and the weak, the strong, everybody was able to grab a lot of meat. The concept of this meat, this quail, this slav, it had a similar taste to like meat and fish. It had like that type of texture, but it depended on who ate them, on their level of appreciation, of enjoyment of that meat. So the righteous people were able to enjoy it and tasted really good and tasted beneficial and healthy and plump and delicious and Lama Ray style, right? High style. If they were wicked, then the meat tasted thorny and was very difficult to eat. So it was miraculous over here. Depending on who ate it is how the level of the meat tasted. So very similar to the situation with man. So by the morning, Moshe Rabbeinu said there was so much meat. They thought like, okay, we'll have so much. Moshe Rabbeinu says, no. By the morning, it's all going to disappear. Why? Because then there's going to be a different miracle that's going to come. This is going to be the miracle of the man, the miracle of the bread from heaven.
Why did Hashem reward them at all if they were complaining so much?
So they got the reward in a sense, but they weren't able to utilize it to the full extent. So one of the things was God was showing them, and this is something that you see time and time again. From the Exodus until Matan Torah, God is proving to them something. And this is a proof that's not only for that time, day and age, it's a proof for all eternity. That God, if He wants, and if you deserve it, you'll be taken care of. Otherwise, your own thing. But God has the capabilities to do anything. You want meat in the desert? How are you going to get meat in the desert? God is going to make so many birds fly, you're not going to know what to do with that meat. So He had the ability. But, now that you have it, some of you are going to enjoy it, some of you are not. Which makes that miracle so much more. Which makes the point come across so much stronger as well.
Where is this part written in, how do we know it?
First of all, this part is written, the Slav is written straight up in the Torah, but the underlying story is based on the Midrashim. Slav is birds, yeah, the quail. So the underlining ideas of where we're going and where all the back, that's the Midrashim, the Gemara, the Zohar, Kabbalah, there's different, you guys are coming over here, you're getting a full, buffet of you're not getting, I'm not reading art school, right? So, okay, so now, if I would, probably no one will understand, because we'll probably have to say like that hard word we mentioned before, ekalaktistis, right? Ekalaktistis, Okay, so now, by the morning, the entire quail disappeared. So imagine the amount of volume of birds that they had. By the morning, everything was gone. And here we can begin the story of the man. So the story of the man, before you even begin with this story, there is a tradition, there is a segula, if we should call it that, a segula that if somebody goes and reads the portion of the man, is guaranteed that he would not, he would have sufficient livelihood. He would have Parnassah. And it's a segula that people do after they pray shacharit, after they finish praying, that they read the section of the man, and that is a segula that a person will never have any deficiencies in Parnassah. Will always have something to be able to live. So there's different things. You read it once. Some people, the real essence of it is reading it twice with Targum, Shtayim Mikra Be'echad Targum. But whatever it is, it's a segula that's very important. So now let's begin with the story of the man. Now, the story of the man begins. It was really a test. God tested the Jewish people. To understand this idea of a test, people think people that are wealthy, good businessmen, they're very intelligent, they're good negotiators, they know how to make deals. I may be talking about a president, whatever it is, right? They know how to. But the real truth is that all this does not spell wealth. If you have good negotiation skills, good talking skills, very intelligent, know how to make business deals, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be successful in business. At the end of the day, it all depends on God. If God will want you to grant you wealth, then you will have wealth. You could be the dumbest businessman, the worst negotiator, the most unintelligent person possible, and you will still be very successful. And at the same point in time, you could be the most intelligent, the best negotiator, best of everything, and be broke. Be sitting at the corner and be overqualified for every job that you ever tried to get. So the thing that we learn from the man is that everything depends on God. But what was the test was? The test was that God said, listen, I'm going to give you everything that you need. You're going to have food come in from heaven, that all your responsibilities are taken. Now, the Jewish people, their responsibility is to follow the Torah. Are you going to learn the Torah? Are you going to follow? Now that you have all the conveniences, all the things everything that you want, do you follow the Torah? Now that you live in an American life where you have the ability to work from 9 to 5, you have the ability to pay your bills, you have the ability to do this, do you follow the Torah? Or do you spend your weekends breaking the Shabbat, going to the movies, doing drugs, going into, what is it going to be? When you have everything, and by everything, it means all your necessities, how are you going to relate to Judaism? Are you going to keep the laws, or are you going to go and break the laws? So, the people that went, the Jewish people that went and spent the time, now that they had the man, learning the Torah, following the Torah, that means that all the other previous times that they weren't able to follow the Torah, it means that they really did want to, they just couldn't. It was beyond their capabilities. It was beyond their abilities to go and follow the Torah. However, those people that had the money, they have everything, they have the money, they're wealthy, and they're not following the Torah, that just shows that they're not interested. They're not interested in Torah, they're not interested in God, they're not interested in religion, they just want to live their life and enjoy the life. So, being that the main task of the Jewish people was to follow the Torah, God was testing them. Let's see, how are you going to follow Torah now? You only have a few commandments. The commandments that we mentioned last week, and Marah, of all the commandments that God gave over there. Are you going to follow the few commandments that you have now? If you do, okay, then we have hope then when you get to Torah. But if you don't, if you're not able to follow the simple few commandments that you have now, what's going to be in the time when you get the whole Torah? And the truth is, we could say that nowadays as well. A majority of the mitzvot that we have, we're not able to do. Because what? It relates to Jerusalem, it relates to the temple. We're not able to do it. But the minority of the mitzvot that we are able to do, the keeping kosher, keeping the Torah, keeping Shabbat, keeping everything that you need to do you keep it what you can? If you do, well, then let's see what happens when Mashiach comes. Then you have a very good chance of surviving that time. But if you can't even keep Judaism and to keep the Torah before Mashiach comes, when we have all that, what chance do you have? Here we have a little bit of a hintling to understanding, like who is going to make it in the time Mashiach comes? Who is not going to survive in the times of Gog and Magog, in the times of all the destruction that's going to happen over there? Hopefully it won't happen. But, whatever it is, may it happen speedily in our days. The merit of the man is based off 3 ideas. The main merit of the man, anybody know? Moshe Rabbeinu. Good job. Thank you. So Moshe Rabbeinu, gotta make people think online that we have, people that know anything here. I'm just kidding. Everybody here knows a lot. Okay. So it was the merit of the man that it was the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu that the man came. Okay. See what happens when I don't speak correctly. When people are coming to class. May you all, everybody here who joined the class, may you all be blessed 1,000 times. May God grant you healthy lives of Parnassah, lives of healthy children going the way of Torah. You have nachat with you, and everything should only be good in your lives. Amen. Okay. So now, Amen. So the merit of who was this. So Moshe Rabbeinu was the main merit. How do we know this is the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu? Because first of all, God told Moshe Rabbeinu, He says, I will make bread rain down for you. To Moshe, when He was speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu, why didn't He say, I'll make bread rain down for them, for the Jewish people? Because it was the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu. And in fact, when Moshe Rabbeinu died on the 7th of Adar, and by the way, I made a mistake, I think in one of my classes on the Exodus, I said that Moshe Rabbeinu died on the 6th of Adar, it's the 7th of Adar. When he died on the 7th of Adar, the man stopped. The bread from heaven stopped. The miracle is that the last final bread that they had lasted for 39 days until when they needed, they had the ability to get more. But the actual bread falling from heaven was in the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu. There was also another merit that came into play, and that's Avraham Avinu. When Avraham Avinu went, and he came and he gave food to the angels that came to visit him after he had the circumcision. So in the merit of that, the food came down to the Jewish people as well. And finally, the third merit that it came in actually in the merit of the Jewish people. The Jewish people went and they learned the portions that they were supposed to learn, that they were taught in Marah. They went and they learned it during this time. So because of that, they also went and they also had the merit to have the man. So now,
what did Moshe do that married?
Moshe Rabbeinu was Moshe Rabbeinu that he merited. He did like everything. There was nothing there. There was not, to my knowledge, it was not like one thing that he did, and because of that. But it was because of Moshe's merit that everything, as such a righteous person, came the man. we have the Bel Shemiam, the clouds, the well of Miriam. We have also the clouds of glory from Aaron. We have different, people that were very righteous, and the merit of them came into different things. The truth is, I'm sure there's a lot to speak about each and every single topic, and it might be a good topic for one of the classes. So now we're going back to the time to where we are in the story. So 31 days left after the Jewish people left Egypt, and then for the first time that morning, this magical bread fell from heaven. This man fell from heaven, and this fell every single day except for Shabbat for 40 years. It rained the man. So the man was something very interesting. Man was one of the things that were created on Erev Shabbat. So the sixth day, on the twilight of creation, God created a number of things that were created like the last minute. If you want to look at the full list of it, it's in Pirkei Avot, chapter 5, Mishnah 6. But some of the things was the mouth of the earth that swallowed Korach. That also was created on the Benesh Mashmot, the twilight of the sixth day of creation, right before Shabbat. And also you have the Miriam's well, where the Jews left. Also the boulder that Moshe struck, that all the water came out. You also had the donkey of Bilam that spoke, was also created at that time. You had the rainbow. You had the staff of Moshe Rabbeinu. You have obviously the man, like we mentioned. You have the shamir worm. Anybody know what the shamir worm was? Oh, very good. Okay, see? You guys do good. Right. So it was the shamir worm was a worm that was able to cut very, very strong material without using metals. So Shlomo HaMelech used it for the Bet HaMikdash. It was a very, very powerful worm that would be able to utilize heavy machinery without utilizing heavy machinery, which was needed for the Bet HaMikdash. So there was also the Shedim is mentioned that was created during this time, and also the burial place of Moshe. If you want to go, there's a few other things that's mentioned. You can look at in the Mishnah Pirkei Avot. So the man was one of the things that were created during this time. The man, even though it was created on the sixth day of creation, it did not materialize into the world until this day. Until the Jews needed it, that's when it materialized. Now, the essence of the man was very, very spiritual. It was known as the bread of angels. It wasn't known as a physical thing. And in fact, you'll see as it came down, it had to transform its qualities from a spiritual aspect to somewhat of a physical thing. So what happened was that when the morning came for the first man to fall out, and this is what happened every time the man fell, there was a strong wind that passed through the desert. And this wind came from Gan Eden. It came from the Garden of Eden, and it went through the Garden of Eden and then through the desert. And it sort of wiped the desert clean. It sort of flattened out. Has anybody here ever walked in a desert and there was a wind, and then you look back, you don't have any footsteps anymore? It's something really, amazing. And I guess if you go to Israel, if you go anywhere in the desert, you get to see this at times. That it's able to just swipe the slate clean. So the wind came, and it just cleaned all the dirt, all the everything. It cleaned the floor of the desert. And once it cleaned the floor of the desert, it actually, there was dew that fell from heaven. The ground was so clean that you were able to see your own reflection on it. That's how clean it was. So what happened was that at the dawn, after the wind came in, and then dew fell down from heaven, the dew sort of was it was frozen. So it sort of solidified and it froze over it. And then the man started coming down. And the man came through the cloud, when it came through the spiritual clouds. It came through the heavenly spheres. It came through a place known as the Shechakim. And when it came through this, it sort of transformed itself from a spiritual thing to somewhat of a physical thing. And as it came down, it transformed more into a physical form. And then it landed on the dew that fell into the desert. And when it landed, it was warm, it was ready to eat, just like it came out of the oven. And one of the things, yeah?
Did it, because it was such a holy food, did it make them more
yes,
on a higher level?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Yeah, very good.
What you eat?
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. So the dew came down. It basically. So the wind came in, cleaned the desert floor, and then the dew came down and froze. So it was completely clean. And then the man from heaven fell down. And once it fell down onto the floor, another dew fell from heaven and coated it. So it was sandwiched in, knowing that it was clean, healthy, very, it would have got an A+ rating according to the Department of Health, whoever gives the ratings. So the Department of Health will give it A+. So they don't give even A+, they just give A's. But this one they would have given A+. So one of the miracles also is that when rain falls, it makes noise, right? You hear the rain falling. Hail, you hear the rain, the hail falling. Even, snow at sometimes, you hear the snow falling. The man fell in complete silence. It was like, it was like floated down. And what you see what the texture of man was, it was a miracle how it just floated down in complete silence. So you have over here, there was dew on the bottom, there was dew on the top, and then you had the man in the middle. This is why on Shabbat we have the challah in the middle, we have a covering under the challah board, and then you have a covering on top, similar to the man also that it was covered below and it was covered above. So now, the man was also what was like the lechem apanim, was the showbread in the time of the temple. The Kohanim had the bread in the temple over there on the shulchan, and these bread never remained stale. They remained fresh for 8 days straight. So too the man always remained fresh, always remained hot, just like it came out of the oven. Now the man looked like a round disc that had a hard crust on the outside and soft in the inside. And it was white with like a yellowish type of goldish tinge, to it. So that was the texture of the man. Now some people go and explain it as similar to like a biscuit type of form. The miracle here was that God made a miracle that the food came from heaven. Usually, where does the food come from? It comes from the ground. You plant in the ground and it grows up. God reversed everything. Now, God could have made a miracle that wheat kernels could have grown from the ground and they would have had wheat. That would have been a crazy miracle. You go in the desert and there's wheat kernels. But God was showing them something. Like, look at the abilities that God had. God was showing also the Jewish people, look how special you are. Instead of making a regular miracle, I'm going to take a miracle, I'm going to reverse it and make it a double miracle. Instead of having food come from the ground, I'm going to come from heaven. So God was showing the Jews time and time again, 12 springs, 70 palm trees, showing them, look how special you are. Instead of having regular food, I'm having food now come from heaven, and reversing the order. The way that the food came, the way that the man fell down, it was really tailored to the individual that was collecting it. So the wicked people had to go and spend a lot of time in preparation to go and prepare the man. However, the righteous people had to spend no time. It came freshly baked out of the oven. Even the pleasure is dependent on your level of spirituality. So if you are on a high level, you enjoyed the man to a much greater level as if you were on a lower, as opposed to a lower level. So for example, Yehoshua, Yehoshua ben Nun, he went and he had the pleasure from the man as if it was equal to combined all the pleasures of all the Jewish people when they ate the man. That was the level of the comparability. So the higher level that you are, the more that you enjoyed it. So the man felt when sunrise, when the sun came up and the sunrise came, the sun evaporated the top layer. So the Jewish people didn't even have to break the top layer in order to get the man. It was there and ready made for them, but it was protected until they came. It's like you go to a bakery and you see this freshly baked stuff right in the front. You'd be like, wait, why isn't it in a bag? It should be in a bag so it doesn't get stale. No, it was so freshly baked that it doesn't need to be in a bag. It just came out of the oven right now. Any bakery you go to, you ask them when this came out. Just when did you come in? Right before that. That's when it came out. The man felt as if it just came out of the oven. So they go outside. The Jewish people go outside and they see, this stuff on the ground. And they're like, what is this? And they use the native language that they had, which is the Egyptian. In Egyptian, what is it is known as manhu. What is this? Manhu. What is this? So Moshe Rabbeinu, they could go over to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, Manhu, what's this? And Moshe Rabbeinu, this is the bread that God gave you. It's a gift that God gave you. That this is going to be the way that God's going to feed you. And you're going to go and don't worry about it. It's safe and you're able to go and eat it. So over time, what was originally known as the bread of angels turned out to be man. Why it came the man? Because it came out from what they used to ask him, manhu. What is it? Manhu, 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 it's man. This is how generally things come into play. Even nicknames, even people, just in general, that's how things come into it's being named. So now, this ended up being called the man. As the day progressed, now there was a level. So there was dew on the bottom, then man, and then you had dew. But the dew eventually evaporated, and then the man was there. But then the man kept on falling. It didn't stop when the dew covered it. It kept on falling and falling and falling, to the point that there was so much man that there was enough man that rained down every single day that the Jews were in the desert for 40 years. It was enough man, just one day, enough to survive the Jewish nation in the desert for 2,000 years. That's how much man you're talking about. There were mountains of man that you were able to see it in the distance. In the desert, you were able to see the mountains of man. Now, the Jewish people didn't realize they weren't able to keep it to the next day. They thought, the initial response was like, okay, like this is our food for our stay in the duration of the desert. Until Moshe Rabbeinu says, no. He says, what you see over here may only be eaten today. You're not allowed to save anything for tomorrow. Everything tomorrow has to go, and we'll soon see where it goes. You're not allowed to save anything for, for tomorrow. So, one of the miraculous displays that happened is that after this like crazy amount of manna fell down, by the time the sun hit the midpoint, the heat of the sun melted all the manna. That it turned into like a river of man fluid, liquid. And this actually went into the Mediterranean Sea. The river was so deep, because there was so much that was melting, that you were able to swim across it. Like that's what, talk about a pool in your backyard in the desert, right? They were able to go and swim across it. They have, I can't even begin to describe like the amount of manna that they had over there. So, the righteous.
Why, like, if they couldn't save it, why didn't God just like make like custom portions instead of like making huge?
So he will. So you'll soon see. He kind of did do that. So the righteous Jews, they woke up early. Righteous Jews in generally wake up early, right? Woke up early. And within the first 2 hours of the day, and they saw all the manna. The less righteous Jews woke up a little bit later, within, let's say, third and fourth hour. The lazy Jews, by the time they woke up after the fourth hour, the manna already melted, and it was all gone. And the miraculous thing happened that by the time, what? No, they weren't. They didn't drink it. We'll soon see who drank it and to what extent that was. But what happened was, by the time the lazy Jews woke up, there was no manna left. They just woke up after they snoozed for like 17,000 times, and they finally get up, and there's no manna left. What the miracle that happened was that there was so much manna that when it melted to the extent, a point in time, that only there was enough for an omer measure. Think about like a little bit like 2 kilo, like was it 1 kilo? We're talking about like 2 pounds worth of manna that was sufficient for the 2 meals for the day per person. An omer measurement. There was an omer measurement that was available for each person. Everything addition to that all melted. So when the lazy people woke up and woke up very late, they went hungry. They didn't have any food. They weren't able to collect any food for that day. They had to go based on donations, like collecting some manna, you have some manna, and it went on to get some people didn't want to eat so much. They gave them donation of the manna. The dew that fell down also it watered the desert to the point that it instantly sprouted grass for the vegetation for the animals. And no matter how much the animals ate, by the next day it was a full set of grass over there. Generally when you have, if anybody here has ever been a shepherd, so once you're doing your shepherd stuff, you finish the grass in the one area, you have to go to the other area until the other parts go back. Over here, from day to day, it kept on regrowing because of the dew that fell. So as the manna melted and it fell into like these streams, the animals came and they drank from the manna, the liquid manna. And in fact, it wasn't only the Jewish animals, it was other animals as well. Other animals came from all over and they saw the water and they started drinking it. And when the non-Jews went and captured these animals, these animals tasted different because they drank from the manna. And they were able to taste it to that extent. And in fact, if a Gentile went and tried to eat the manna, it tasted bitter to them. We'll soon see what happened with the Erev Rav. But the Gentiles, when they ate it, it tasted bitter. But when did they appreciate the manna? When they ate the animals that they caught that drank from the streams of the melted manna. So the way that it worked with the manna is it depended also on your righteous level. For the righteous people, it fell right on your doorstep. You woke up in the morning, manna delivery, ding dong, you have over here a full set of buffet of manna. For the less righteous people, they had to go and they had to travel a little bit further to go and get it. For the wicked people, they had to travel very, very far to get it, and when they had to travel very far, the taste, everything was different. Like, so the righteous people, it was fresh as just it came out of the oven, and it stayed fresh the entire day. For the less righteous people, they had to walk a little bit further, and it was less fresh. For the wicked people, they had to walk really far, and it was like kernels of grain that they had to go and they grind it, that they had water, they had to go through the whole process and make the bread that they had. After all that, it tasted like regular bread. So depending on your righteous level was depending on where it landed and how it tasted to you. One of the reasons that God did this is that the wicked people, when they have a lot of time, they're up to no good. So let them be busy making manna all day, so this way they're not going to have any mischief. I remember when I was in 6th grade, there was a guy in my class, it was a kid in my class that, he had some situations, let's call it, and every time, like, the rabbi would see that he's getting too, like, heated up, he says, okay, listen, go to the basement and check if the hot water is running. And he would say that every time, and the guy would be like, okay, fine. And he would get up, he would go downstairs to the basement, come back up like 2-3 minutes later, says, yeah, there's hot water in the basement. The rabbi says, okay, good, take a seat. By that time, the kid was quiet already, and it was calm. He wasn't causing any problems over there. I still remember to this day. So, what? You do the same thing? Check if the hot water is running next door. In Afghanistan, tell me if there's running water.
We keep them busy. We have them set the table. We have them.
Right, you distract them so they don't. He was a very hot-headed kid. So I don't know where he is nowadays. I haven't heard from him from maybe like 20 years. But I'm very curious to see what happened with it. But I remember the rabbi always just send him downstairs to the basement. Go downstairs and see if there's hot water. And he would go. He wouldn't ask any questions. He would go, a few times a day to check if the hot water is running. So, what? Maybe if he listens to it, I hope he reaches out to me. I'm very curious to see how he's doing. I hope he's all as well. So, what God did was God went and He wanted to keep the wicked people busy. If you kept them busy, they're not going to do you're not going to cause any problems. But in essence, really, this was all a test. This is one of the things that God told him to do is that you have so much man, but you're only allowed to collect for 1 day's worth. An omer per person. Anything extra, you're not allowed to collect. This is what test. Are you going to follow God? Are you not going to follow God? So, and by the way, the volume that it was 2 kilos. So it's 2 kilos, that's 2 by 2, that's 4.4 pounds of man that they would be able to keep per person every single day. So, if you look in the Psukim in the Torah on this, in Exodus chapter 16, verse 16, the Pasuk goes, this is the thing that God went and commanded you. And what did God command? God commanded that every person collects 1 omer per day, depending on the amount of persons per the household. So this Pasuk, the Mount Laws brings down, that has the entire Hebrew alphabet in this one Pasuk, meaning that if somebody goes and immerses himself in the Torah, which is what the Hebrew alphabet was written from, and you immerse yourself, then you won't have to worry about Parnassah. You'll get your livelihood without any toil. Now people go, and people who, let's say if somebody doesn't have a business, they're in the pre-business stage or the post-business stage, or they don't have anything. What should they do? They're required to sit and learn Torah. What if somebody has enough money? He is also required to go and sit and learn Torah. There are some people that say, listen, how can I leave my business? If I leave my business, I'm going to lose money. So God says, for what you tell to those people? Those people that says, I need to go and work, I don't have time to learn Torah. God says, show them the man. Show them the section of the Torah of the man, which is why you begin to see why it's a skula for Parnassah. Show them the section of the man. The man, God says, I could feed somebody regardless of whatever they do. Regardless of how much they work and what they do, I'm able to feed them. And this is really a requirement. If somebody needs to work, which is, a requirement, you do need to work, then do you learn in the morning before you go to work? Do you learn at night before you go to sleep, after you go to work? So you have people that either they're not religious or they're very, very modern, or they don't bother with learning Torah, and they decide that they're going to focus their entire life on learning, on working. So they're going and they're waking up very early and they're working very long hours and they're working very late hours and they barely see the family, they barely see anything, and they think that this is the way that they're going to make money. But in essence, the Torah tells us that these people, all their work is in vain. God can give you the same Parnassah if you work for 12 hours a day, if you work for 8 hours a day. The extra work is not going to give you extra Parnassah. In fact, this is what it says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, chapter 10, verse 22. It says, Birkat Hashem hi ta'ashiel. The blessing of God is what's going to make you wealthy. V'lo yosif etzev ima. The riches is not going to come in. The more toil that you bring won't bring anything, won't bring any riches. Obviously, you have to do yishtalut. You have to go and sit and work. You can't expect to sit at home, smoke pot, and play video games and expect, listen, I have a wundan bitachon in God that He's going to provide me for food. No, you have to do yishtalut. But what are you doing when you're not doing the yishtalut? Are you learning, or are you relaxing in front of the TV? Are you learning, or are you reading the paper? Are you learning, or are you going and you're, fell on Facebook and what is that called? Stalking everybody that you possibly know. Or you're reading the news because you're going to need to do a press conference in the cooler tomorrow. Yeah.
So if someone decides to be a full-time learner, they can just believe that Parnassah will come?
Depends on their level of learning. There are people that are full-time learning that are full-time cooler people. They make sure everything is kosher around the cooler. 24/7. They're always there. And there are some people that are going and they're sitting and they're actually learning Torah. Those people that are sitting and actually learning Torah, God will take care of them. There's a proof you go to Israel, or even over here in America, you have people that sit and learn Torah all day. Yes, it's difficult depending on the level. We're not God, we cannot just... they're happy. So define poor.
Like,
Financially, so they
yeah.
can't go on a yacht?
No, like a lot of them don't have like money for like basic things.
So it depends. So those are the people that you have the responsibility to go and help them. But the majority of them somehow survive. How? Only God knows. And I've said this before. I've spoken to people, that live in Kolo, that every month, according to like nature, they should not be surviving. There are people that are down hundreds of dollars every month before the month closes. And every month they survive. And you have people that are working 3 jobs. And you have people that barely open a sefer and they can't make ends meet. Yet you have here someone who's learning, all day learning Torah. The wife works a little bit and stays home with the children, and yet somehow they make ends meet. So yes, you'll always see situations where people will have that, whatever it is. I'm not God's accountant. I don't know the reason behind it. But the general idea that what God says, if you do what God asks you to do, God will take care of you. Promise. If you don't, then you're on your own. You think you're smart, you think your college degree is going to get you Parnassah, you think your connection's going to get you Parnassah, then fine, go see how your connections do. But if you go and you follow God with Emunah and Bitachon, that's why even the wealthy have a requirement. They have to pray for Parnassah. Why? Because it shows you the level of faith that you're supposed to have. So now, the people that go and they end up investing everything in this world. There's a certain profession. I'm going to say it. It might be wrong, but I'm going to say it just because I know enough people in it, enough people about it that think this way. And that's the law profession. Anybody here going to be a lawyer? No. Okay. So the law profession, if you want to make it big, if you want to get into the top firms, you have to put in your hours. You have to put in the billing cycles. You have to put in. You're talking about you don't see your family. Ever. Usually you say, okay, until you make it, then you don't see it. No, I've spoken to people that are partners in law firms. They still don't see the families. They're still working around the clock. They're still working, 18 hours a day. People that they work from the morning till night, and they come home for dinner, and then they're working till 10 o'clock again. And that's already in a high level, a position in a law firm. They think that the more hours I clock in, the more I'm going to be able to bill, the more I'm going to be able to make. And that's the concept that you're supposed to do. And God says, no, absolutely not. It has nothing to do with that. You have to do your shtadlut. But your purpose in this world is not to go and chase after this and chase after that. Your purpose in this world is to grow spiritually. If you're not messing with it, you want to try this way, go see how it works. But really, in essence, the sages tell us that the world, the day is comprised of 24 hours. You're supposed to split it into 3. Take 24 divided by 3, you have 8 hours in 3 sections. So the first 8 hours, you eat, you drink, and you sleep. You do everything that you need to do in the physical sense. The next 8 hours, you work. 8-hour day, you work. The final 8 hours, you're supposed to be learning Torah. You're supposed to be doing the commandments that you're supposed, including learning and davening and making it, everything. That's supposed to be the final 8 hours. That's really the way that it's supposed to be. And in fact, in the olden days, the righteous people, that's what they did. They worked a little bit, and then they studied a lot, and they had success both in their studies, and they had success as well in their work as well. And then you have people nowadays that they work nonstop. They put 24-hour days, and they don't see their family, they don't see anything. Those are the type of people, in Yiddish you say nishtah here and nishtah hain. They don't get not over here and not over there. They don't get this world and they don't get the next world. They come and they don't open a book maybe once a week. They don't hear a Torah class also maybe once every 2 weeks. And they don't do anything. And what are they left with? They're left with nothing in this world and nothing in the next world. The biggest kicker is that. That's the biggest kicker, that you don't have, if you're going and you're working and you're making you're very, very successful, okay, at least you have this world. Even though it's nothing compared to the next one, but at least you have something. But if you have nothing here and nothing there, then what did you gain after everything? Everything is nothing. Now, I gotta be very, very, very clear. Like, you have to do your shtalut. You have to, if you're in business, you have to go and do your things that you need to do in business. You have to be, things. Don't be lazy. You have to be aggressive. You have to be a smart businessman. You have to go through things. But there is. And this is really, when we're going to speak about Emunah, we're going to deal about this. What's the difference between Hishtadlut and what's the difference between everything Ashgacha, and have to stand back and everything is from God? There is a level there, but you have to do your Hishtadlut. So you have to go, and if you need to work, and if you need to make a business deal, if you need, whatever it is to do, you have to put it. You have to put your time, your effort, and you have to do it well. You have to do it good. But once you take a step too far, when you make it that the main thing is this and everything else is secondary, you think that type of priority is, this guy's going to be successful. When he thinks money, when he breathes money, when he dreams money, everything is money. You think that guy's going to be no, it doesn't work that way. God says it's not going to go that way. You're going to follow me, and you're going to have success. You're not going to follow me, then you're going to have to go through the way of nature. So now, the way that it worked with the taste. was funny. I thought that I would be able to go through this whole topic in one day. What a joke I am to myself. So the essence really is that when somebody goes and somebody does the right thing, that will bring blessing into their life. When someone does something wrong and they sin, that will bring curses into their life, and it brings problems into their life, and it brings troubles, and they lose Parnassah because of that. The more good that you do, the better off that you are. The more bad that you do, the worse off that you are. And people that are able to follow other businessmen or anything, to be honest, it's anything. It doesn't have to be businessman. You could see that this stands up and holds true in this world. You see it. I'm able, I speak to many people, and I deal in many different situations, and I see the situation firsthand. You have people that go and they're making a ton of money, but instead of doing the right thing with their money, instead of giving tzedakah, instead of learning a little bit Torah, instead of doing the right thing, they go into the wrong path. You follow their path a year, 2, 3, maybe even 10 years down the line, and all of a sudden you see problems that come up, and you see it. You see like it's hard to see it when you're in it, right? It's hard to see it when you're in it, but when you're outside, you see, and when you know God's blueprint, and it says, if you follow my Torah, you're going to get this. If you don't, then you don't. If you are able to see that, you're able to see this in life. You're able to see it. You follow through people in their life, and you see how this person was successful when they were younger, and all of a sudden they were not. They might be making a lot of money. That doesn't mean that they're success. Something that I mentioned before, that I was planning on mentioning it next week. That's what I was looking at my notes where I was going to mention it, but I mentioned it now also, that you have some people, let's say, that they go and Rosh Hashanah, there was a decree that they were going to make, let's say, that year, $150,000. And they're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to work extra hard, I'm going to make more. And they go and they do, and they finagle on this, and they end up stealing, and they end up making 300 grand. You see, like, aha, you see? I made more money. It doesn't work that way. When you think that you made more money, if God decreed that you're going to make 150 grand, if you work harder, you'll be able to make more money. You will. More money will come to you, and you'll be able to make it. But it's not going to stay with you. You're going to go, you're going to put it in the bank, or you're there, and then maybe 2 years down the line, you're going to go and invest that money, and you're going to lose it all. You cannot cheat God. You cannot cheat more than you are supposed to get. Whatever you're supposed to get, that's what's God going to give it to you. And that is the lesson that you learn from the man. The man says, God is going to say, I'm going to take care of you. You do what you need to do. You're learning Torah? Oh, you're righteous, you're learning Torah? Food is going to fall on your doorstep. You don't have to do anything. Oh, you're wicked, you think you're smarter than everybody else? Go find your food. Go downstairs, see if the hot water. Go see what's going on in the desert. Tell me if the coyotes are still there. I don't know if coyotes are there. Whatever. Go see if the foxes are still there. So, the way it worked is also, give me like about 5-10 minutes and we'll close it off. The taste of the man also depended on the level of the righteousness of the person. In general, the plain taste of the man was very, very sweet. It was so, I don't know if you ever eaten or drunken something very sweet, it makes you nauseous. The more sweeter it is. The miracle of the man was that even though it was the sweetest thing possible, it never made anybody nauseous. It was so sweet, it was so delicious. The way that it worked also was that it depended on what you imagined it to eat. If you imagined it to taste like something, it tasted like that. But that also, Midrashim says, it depends on your spiritual level. If you had a minimum of some sort of spirituality, then you had the variety of tastes open to you. How many tastes there were? The Midrashim tells us it was 546 different types of tastes, the numerical value of matok. That's how many different tastes the man was able to go and change into. But it all depended on your spiritual level. If all you needed was a little bit of spirituality, you have the full gamut of tastes that you have open to you. Whatever you thought about, it tasted. It changed the taste. It changed the smell. It changed the texture to a certain extent as well. Everything tasted to the extent that you want and you thought about it. But let's say the people that were wicked, the people that didn't have the ability to go and change the taste, those people, the man still adjusted to them for their benefit. It still worked for their benefit. So for example, the young and the elderly people, it was very sweet because they enjoy sweet stuff. So it tasted very sweet. The adolescent, let's say, people, tasted more like bread-like substances, which was what they enjoy and what's more beneficial for them. The sick people, it gave the healing qualities. If it was a mother, it gave things that made her milk more beneficial for the child. Everything that it worked, it changed itself towards your need and necessity. So if you were sick, it made you healthier. If you're not, whatever it is, if you were nauseous, it tastes like ginger ale. I don't know if that's a thing or not. But whatever it was, it was the change to the food that was very, very beneficial for the person itself. What happened to the Erev Rav? So the Erev Rav, the Midrash brings down that it says that they drank from the streams of the melted man that ran off towards the sea. The man in itself, besides falling down as like a spiritual food, there was more that came to it. It also perfumed the tents. So it had like a scent, to it, and it made it smell like flower, like amazing smell. In fact, the woman didn't need perfumes for the entire stay of the desert. The man gave them perfume for 40 years. They didn't need anything else other than the man. Besides the perfume and the smell and the food that came out, it also came down from heaven these like pearls and diamonds and gems that also fell as well. So the Jews were able to collect the food, they had the smell, they had everything covered for them at this point in time. Now also, the last point that I want to bring out is the spiritual effect that the man had. The man, because it was a spiritual food, what you eat also depends on your thought process. And in fact, there is a correlation to it. You eat spicy food, you have different... It also affects your dreams, by the way. Depending on the foods that you eat, if you have spicy foods and you had certain type of dreams, that's okay, fine. It's probably because of the food. So the fumes go into your head and also change your thought process as well. The most easy way to explain this is, have you ever eaten a really large meal, like on any Shabbat ever, and you're like, so you're hibernating mode in like a beer, right? You have to like, like, where's my honey? You're like a beer, you're like clawing your way. Like, why all of a sudden are you tired? You don't get tired during lunch during the week. Like, why all of a sudden on Shabbat day, and you're eating this? So when you eat too much, it affects you. It affects you to the point that it makes you tired.
Of klipa, that's why.
Oh, whatever. There's different reasons for it, but we don't have to go so Kabbalistic. But yeah, if you want to go there, you could. So the food in itself has an effect on you physically and spiritually, and that's why I was speaking to somebody, I don't remember how, this week, that I was explaining to them the beneficial ideas of going to these like Kiruv Shabbatons, where you have, like, for example, gateways or Achin seminar, or whatever. You have these type of seminars that they take you on a Shabbaton for like a weekend, and they give classes over there, and they give different types of proofs of Judaism, basically a whole Jewish environment. One of the most important things over there that people don't realize is that for a weekend, all you're doing is you're eating kosher food. If you don't keep kosher, people go over there, they go to this weekend, they get spiritually, like attached. They're like, yeah, it's true, it's the lectures, and it's true, it's that. But even if somebody goes and they're going and they're eating non-kosher throughout their entire life, and all of a sudden for like a weekend, their digestive system goes to like kosher food, good food, things that are healthy spiritually and physically, it changes your thought process and it changes your spiritual aspect as well. Those people, that's why when they're in the Shabbaton, they're like, amazing, God is real for sure. Like, I'm going to keep it. And then they go out to the supermarket, they buy some non-kosher gum, some non-kosher candy, and this, and then a week later, they're back to their normal self. Like, what happened? Like, a week ago, you realized it. Because besides the intellectual capacity that you had on understanding the real facts of the Torah and real ideas of God, all of a sudden you're infused with your impurities now, of your non-kosher food, your non-kosher, environment that affects you. So, in the same sense, the Jewish people, when they ate the man, they may ate a very spiritual food. Would that also change them in their emotional sense, in the physical sense, in the intellectual sense, to the point that they didn't have any more evil thoughts? It was able to cleanse them of the evil thoughts. The Jewish people were known as the Dol De'ah, the generation of the knowledge, because they had this capacity of eating the man, and it brought to them the high level of knowledge. It gave them, think of it as smart foods. I'm sure nowadays you go and search smart foods, that probably give you like avocado, and omega-3, and omega-6, and omega-9, a squared, like all these things that it's healthy and it's good. You should be healthy and you should eat all these foods. But think about what the man was. The man was healthy food on steroids in a healthy way. Like everything somehow in a healthy. That the Jewish people needed this in order to get to the Torah. They had the man 20 days before they got to Torah. So 20 days they were eating the man, they brought them to the level of a Dol De'ah, they were able to go and accept the Torah. And also the people that ate the man, their bodies didn't decay in the ground. It didn't decay. There was a spiritual food that didn't decay in the ground. There's also righteous people nowadays that they were buried, and even 200 years ago, they were buried and they moved the bodies. They had to move them because whatever reason that they had to move them, and they saw the body. 200 years later, the body is still intact. Naturally speaking, it makes absolutely no sense. The worms, the maggots, the decay process should take about a maximum of a year that it goes in decay. But yeah, you see people that were righteous, people that don't live for this world, they live for the next world. Their bodies didn't decay, and their bodies went, and they were able to stay to that extent. So, that being said, then we're going to open up for questions. We're going to stop off over here. We're going to pause over here on the story of the man. We're going to continue B'ezrat Hashem next week. But one thing we see over here is the beneficial level of the man. One of the most important lessons that you can learn from the man is the lesson of Parnassah. Everybody wants Parnassah. Everybody wants it. The one thing that you have to learn, and you have to repeat yourself again and again. That's why there's a skula to read this section in the Torah every single day. Because when you read it every single day, it imprints in your mind that if you follow God's Torah, if you follow what you need to do, God's going to take care of you. And that's what you read in the Torah. If God says you're going to learn Torah, you're going to get everything that you need. Look at the lessons of the man. The man, the Jews that went and they did everything they needed to, got the highest level, highest reward possible in this world and the next world. That is one of the most important lessons that you can learn from the man. Let's open up for questions. Yes, and after.
Isn't the body supposed to decay?
Then the body?
Aren't bodies supposed to decay?
Body, so the question is like this: aren't bodies supposed to decay? So the answer is yes, they are when it's needed to. So people, let's say, in the after they pass away and they get put into the ground, in Israel they don't put you in a coffin. They put you straight in the ground like that. In New York, in America, I don't know if it's all in America, there's a requirement that you have to put someone in a coffin. But they leave a little bit of a split on the bottom, so there's some connection to the ground so the worms could come in. If you're in some mahogany little, casket that you spend 15 grand on it, and it's cushioned, and it's, Egyptian cotton inside over there, and everything is amazing, that's not beneficial for the soul, because the soul goes through judgment until the body finishes the decaying. Once the body finishes decaying, then the soul, that's why it's about a year, and that's why the punishment in Gehenna and judgment is also about 11 months a year. So that's why they do it, it's corresponding at the same time. However, that's when you need it. Some people are on such a high level that they don't need it because they have no judgment. There's no Gehenna for them. They're going straight to heaven. They're going straight into that. Because they don't have that, then there's no need for the decaying, and hence their body stays intact. But for the majority of the people, the decay is very important, and they do need to go through that process. You're right. You're 100% correct. Yes?
Two things, sorry. Will we have some type of thing like man when Mashiach comes?
It's a good question. Will we have Manna when Mashiach comes?
Something like that, maybe. And also,
the buffet of money, I'll have a shot.
It's just a general question.
It's a good question. I have to look into it.
Another one is I've had
Thank you, guys.
This question for years, I think, honestly. Learning halacha has always turned me off to Judaism. Is there a class, or could you give one about the spiritual aspects behind it, reasons for it? Because I just don't connect to it at all.
So rules and regulations. Why does God? So the
why
question.
Does every little thing matter, and why do we even have them?
So So the reason, the question is why do we do what we do, basically? What's the really whole point behind it? Yeah. So there is two things that you need to know. This is, but you're asking something that's very, very common to a lot of people. Really, does God really care if I do this? Does it really matter? So there's two different aspects that you have to look at it. Number one, there is a reason and a rhyme for everything that you do. To the extent...
Everything to
everything till you do it. Do we know everything? No, there's some things that are known as chok, where we don't have all that. For example, paraduma. This is beyond our capacity. So, to understand. But there is a reason for everything that we do. But that's not really the level that you need to reach at. Think of it like this, that I have people that ask me questions, and they ask me different types of questions. And based on the questions, I answer, generally this is my method. I answer the question, and then I tell them, okay, listen, but really there's something else going on behind you. There's something else that really brought you to that question. Here's the answer to the question. But there's another reason to it. The essence of why we do what we do and all the Judaism, the highest level of serving God is not because you know the reasons and you understand the reasons and you know the Kabbalistic, mystical reasons behind it. The reason is because God told you, do this, it's good for you because I told you to do it. And you're like, well, you're God, you created me, you created the entire world, you created the heavens, you know better than me, then fine, I will listen to you. Regardless of how we think we're so smart and we need to understand the reason before we do it. And in essence, we don't do that. You ask anybody that asks these questions, do you know all the chemical properties of Tylenol? No. But yet you take it. Why? Because you know that it's good for you to a certain extent. But why? Maybe it's bad. Maybe pharma is out for you, right? It's all about the immunizations. It's cancerous, or controlling your mind, and the government did 9/11. We could go on, right? So, So the Jews run the bank, whatever it is, in Hollywood country, whatever. But I'm just kidding. So, or am I? I don't know. But the essence really is that the bottom line is that you're supposed to follow God's Torah because guess what? God knows better than you. God created the Torah, and God told you this is what you need to do. Everything else that you think you're so smarter, just remember, you're dealing with the Creator, and you're like a nothing compared to that
It's
exam.
very like overwhelming.
It is. But when you have the correct thought, really, you have an answer. If you have something in particular, we can look for the answer. We can find an answer of why you need to do it.
Why do like different like rabbis hold like such different like views then? If it's just like one law.
So when you're going, that's a very, very heavy question and a very deep question. In essence, the rabbis don't hold different views. There is the basic halakha, and that's what everyone says. There are different minhagim, there are different customs, there are many different interpretations to different customs. There's the end of the day, everybody keeps Shabbat the same way, everybody keeps kosher the same way. Oh, okay, so some people keep a Bet Yosef kashrut, which is a little stronger than whatever. People have a different, but the bottom line is, it's the same halachot that we're keeping. Okay. The 630 commandments, the Sfaradim and Ashkenazim don't have different interpretation of the 630 commandments. They have the same thing. Yeah, there's different interpretations on it. I gave a whole class in the Divinity series on how do we get to machlokot, what does that mean, how do we have that, or how do rabbis make up laws. I have 2 classes on that, and I constantly recommend people to listen to that class because I go through all those details. But the essence really that you need to, the fundamental reason is that what we do is because God told us to do this. God told you to do this, and that's why we do it. There are reasons for everything, and that's one of the things that I tried to do when I speak about different holidays and different topics of mitzvot. I try to bring out why we do what we do. So I have that on Sukkot, I have on Pesach, HaMatzah, I have on the 4, the 4 minim, the Abba minim, I have the love. I go and explain the mystical levels of it, but that's like a high and a low level at the same time. The highest level is you do it because God told you to do it.
So sorry. Also.
Yeah.
So why is there a concept of like chumras like? They bother me. I don't know why.
Chumras, you think about it like a Hasidim.
Halacha is like, why can't we just keep halacha? Like that's like enough already.
Right. So why do we have to go above and beyond? So the question is really in essence to the Hasidic perspective on it. The Hasidic perspective is going above and beyond. That's why Hasidim have long payot, for example, because you have to have payot, but no, they're going to go longer. They take things. The real understanding of a Hasid is someone that goes above and beyond, what required by law. What you're required to do is the law. You don't want to go above and beyond? Fine. You don't have to. Oh, but you want to, it shows something else. For example, so your spouse goes and says, hey, listen, can you please, I'm so in the mood of an ISIS. Can you please pick me up an ISIS? And you're like, sure, what flavor you want? Strawberry. I love strawberry. I need strawberry ISIS. So fine, you go to the store and you see 4 different variations of the strawberry ISIS. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to buy all 4 for that. Be like, why are you going above and beyond? Just buy them one, and they'll be happy. They just wanted one. But it shows how much you appreciate it, how much it means to you. Be like, listen, I care about you so much. You tell your spouse, I love you so much. And it says, I don't know which one you wanted, so I bought you all of them. Oh, but you could have called. No. I want to show you how much it means. You don't buy your wife 1 rose, right? I mean, you could. It's still nice. You buy a dozen roses, right? You buy a dozen of these dying, decaying flowers and say, here, present this way. I mean, whatever. It's very healthy to do. It's very good to do. You go and you present this but why? Well, because you're going above and beyond. Was it in the Ketubah? Do you have a requirement? Does it say in the Torah that you have to buy your wife roses?
No, but you should.
But you should, because why? You're going above and beyond to show you how much it means to you, this relationship. So when a Jewish person goes and says, you know what, I want to go above and beyond what I'm required to do, it shows God, listen, I love you so much and I care about you so much that, yeah, this is what's required of me, but let me show you how much it cares. Like, I want to show you I'm going to go on above and beyond. So it's not a requirement that you have to go above and beyond, but it's a voluntary, idea on Judaism that says, like, I love it so much, let me go above and beyond. So that's the concept of Hasidim, that's the concept of doing all these things that not all of them, but some of the things that they do.
But on that idea, are people that are doing the basics not as close to God, not love as much, because
it depends on the person. So your question is,
others like look down.
Right. So the question is, God doesn't compare you by like, well, listen, you're praying to me for 5 minutes. Well, your next door neighbor just prayed to me for 1 hour. So. No. God has a requirement from you. 613 requirements, right? Nowadays, obviously, you take half of them; they're not applicable. But God has a requirement for you. You have to do that. You have a good relationship with God. Now, relationships work in a way that effort that you put into it. You want to go on a higher level of relationship, so it depends. Do you have to? You're not required to do it. Do you want to? It depends. Like, God is not going to look at you, well, you're not as good as somebody else. God judges you. When you come up to heaven, God doesn't ask you, how come you weren't Moshe Rabbeinu? God asks you, how come you weren't Yehoshua? How come you weren't who you were supposed to be? God judges you according to you, not according to anybody else. Not according to your neighbor, not according to your sister, not according to your husband, not according to your daughter or your mother, your sister or your brother, and only you. So in essence, do you get punished for not doing extra? No, you don't get punished for not doing extra. Do you get rewarded for doing extra? Yes, it's called extra credit. That's the same idea of extra. You don't.
Punished, but for like the thought behind it is like the husband that does give 1 rose instead of 12. Does he love less?
No.
No, it might. He might.
That they love so much they want to do more.
So the way that it works is it's not. So what you're asking is actually a very, very good question. Like, does it show that you love God less if you're doing less? So not necessarily, because God can. I don't know which example I can use for this, but like you have somebody who gives his wife a present every single day, but he also has another wife that he doesn't tell his wife, that he's not really his wife, that he's with, whatever. So like that type of person, but he's giving his wife a present. Does it mean that he love her more? No, there's another guy that doesn't give his wife a present once in their 100 years of marriage. Does that mean that doesn't? No, it doesn't necessarily mean the level of your love, but it shows the level of your love. So there's obviously a lot more fundamentals that go into it. So for example, and I'm happy that you brought this up. So let's say somebody goes and he's like a Hasid level, and he goes above and beyond on so many different things, but the basic stuff he barely does. He just like flies through it and just walks the walk, talks the talk, dresses the dress, but doesn't do anything else about it. Like, that doesn't mean that he's in a high level of connection to God. But what happens is that, let's say you have somebody who's doing only the basic stuff for Judaism, but they do it with their full heart. They really do everything they do. That person is a lot higher level what it appears to be what somebody who does more does. So there's effort that comes into play with this more than actually action. God judges you based on effort, not based on action.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to do your action,
that
613.
was like my question also.
Okay, good. So I'm happy that you asked it, and I'm happy that you asked it, and I'm happy that you asked it, and I'm happy that you, whatever anybody asked. Okay, anybody, other questions? No other questions? All right, good. Okay, to be continued next week, B'ezrat Hashem, God willing. Chazak u'baruch.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.